If you go back over the Tower of Babel, do you know what is happening over there? When God confounds the languages and scatters the people out, he actually makes a list of all the Gentile nations, and he does it in accordance with the sons of Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And he says, here are the nations that came from Ham, and here's the areas that they settled. And here's the nations that came from Japheth, and here's the areas where they settled. And here's the nations that came from Shem, and here's all the areas where they settled. Have you ever gone over there and counted those nations? Those are the Gentile nations. Now, I realize those numbers change through time. But those are the original, all of those land areas were initially settled by these nations. And do you know how many is over there? 70. And this is at the Tower of Babel. This is where God calls those 70 nations out. By the way, you do. Let me ask you a question. When Jesus chose his disciples and called them to him, how many did he choose? You chose 12, and Judas was part of that, right? But he chose him. Okay. But there was another group that he chose. Anybody remember how big that group was? The exact number of the nations, 70. And you remember there was a commission given at the end of every gospel that they were go you into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Remember that? God has never forgotten about the 70. If you take all of the land area, I can't draw it on a map. If you look at all of Paul's journeys, if you take that first journey, remember he stoned at Lystra and he comes back to Antioch. The second journey, he goes all the way over, goes into Asia Minor, goes over, Ephesus and all those other places, and he comes all the way back. And then the third journey, and he goes all the way over, and he comes all the way back. We're going to cover this in some detail at the end of the book when we get into chapter 16. And then he goes to Rome. And when he's in Rome, but you remember when he writes to the Romans, before he goes there as a prisoner, he writes to the Romans, and he's going to tell them. We just haven't come to it yet. It's in chapter 16. I still plan to go to Spain, because, but I'm going to stop and see you guys on the way. Do you know what's really interesting about that? If you take those 70 nations, 70 Gentile nations, and you look at them on a map from back then where they were, and then look at where Paul has gone, there was only, now we're talking different names because, the names of countries change through time. But if you take that list of 70 back there in Genesis, you will find that there is only one geographical area that Paul has not yet been to. He's been to 69 out of the 70. Guess where the 70th one was? Tarshish, Spain. It's not called Spain back in Genesis. It's called Tarshish. All the rest of them you can check off your list. 70 nations, 70 disciples, and Paul's the apostle of the Gentiles, and that's why I used to wonder, why are you so itching to get over there to Spain that you're just going to stop off and see the Romans? What? You know what? Paul knew this. You know what he wanted to go? He wanted to go to every geographic Gentile area and preach the gospel of Christ. And so there's a big debate among the scholars. Was there a time when Paul was let out of prison? And a lot of them think he was. And we don't have any record of what he did. And then later he was rearrested and went to trial and then he was beheaded. And some say, no, he never was released. There's a big debate about that. But I will guarantee you this. If he did get out for a short period of time, I know exactly where he went. Yes, he did. Because he was going to fulfill that. Now, to me, that is just amazing stuff when you start to put all of that together.